Hi, you're listening to Victor the Slasher Sheldon on Ride by Day, Wrench by Night, presented by Vintage Jet Ski.
Hello and welcome back to Ride by Day, Wrench by Night with me, Cam Wise. Today's guest needs no introduction. Hailing from Alaska didn't stop this legend from becoming an 8-time world champion of the sport. And you couldn't miss his unique racing style either with those famous leg drag turns. We're talking, of course, of none other than Victor the Slasher Sheldon. We cover a broad range of topics in this episode, including what it was like racing for Butch's jet ski shop, Tec Yamaha, factory Kawasaki and Polaris. We go over that famous Pole air intake system of the '89 season, how he got his call sign the Slasher and the other names that were in the mix, his thoughts on the 1991 season when innovation within the industry was pushing the limits of the electronic fuel injection systems that were available at the time, and the advent of the runabout class and the effects it had on the industry. And of course, his thoughts on the Polaris Octane, a ski with a very big cult following. So get ready to hear some great tech tips and behind the scenes insight into what it was like at the top of the sport in what is undoubtedly a very impressive career. So settle in and enjoy. So how does a boy who grew up in Alaska turn into Victor the Slasher Sheldon, the Californian icon, the legend of motorsport that we all know him as today?
That's a really good question. It's a really good story, by the way, because not many people from Alaska become a professional jet ski racer for 24 years. Coming from Alaska, it was a little bit different person than, the normal Southern California jet ski racer. So although a lot of people thought that I was born and raised in California, I always had bright colors, had the frosted tips and, kind of looked the part. But yeah, my blood's from Alaska. And I was really fortunate to grow up there because I still have some, lifelong dear friends. I have no family up there, but I still have friends that, that mean the world to me. And, a buddy of mine, Steve Diptula, he's actually the one that, he had a jet ski and he was an older gentleman, kind of like my second dad. And he's the one I bought my first jet ski from while I lived there. And it was pretty much my last $1,500 that I had to my name. And I was like, man, I'm going to, I was kind of, I was just out of high school and felt I needed to be doing something with my life. And, buying toys was important, but, having a savings account was too. But yeah, I bought the jet ski and, I think I gave him $1,000 and then $500. So I just kind of, paid it off over the summer. And, that summer, I actually decided to make a trip down to the World Jet Ski Finals in 1986. So I was a spectator with a bunch of people from Alaska that had made the trip down there. And my friend Pat Crabb and I, drove down. We went for a whole month and we just went all around California. And we went, we ended our vacation at the World Jet Ski Finals and had the time of our lives. Like it was like the whole time I was just like, I have to do this. This is something that I want to be a part of. So, any rate, in the meantime, while that was all going on, my parents decided to move from Alaska to California. So here I was a 17-year-old kid, kind of not much direction, just out of high school. And, it's really strange how it all happened. I mean, it's a long story, but it all happened for the best. And I ended up in Arizona for a year, staying at my sister's house, sleeping on the floor, just kind of in the middle of not having any direction in my life, not knowing what I was going to do, but I knew that I wanted to ride jet skis. That's all I could think about. That's all I wanted to do. If I made any little money, it went into the gas tank for my car and my jet ski. And at any rate, it just went to my first race and won my first race as a novice. It was at a surf race in Oceanside Harbor, or not Harbor, at Oceanside, California. It was a surf race, and I won. And I was just like, I won like some 5 gallons of trick racing fuel, and I won a jetivator that just came out of the back, and I won a bunch of all this little stuff, and I was blown away. I was like, I've made the big time, man.
Yeah.
I've made it. And then after that year, I just started meeting people, and it started to become more fun because I was meeting people, and we all had a little group, and just things were starting to roll. And my timing with jet ski, I think, couldn't have been any better, because at that time the sport was growing, there was opportunity in it, and I was right there in it to be able to capitalize on that.
Absolutely. And you were young, strong, fit, and you would have carried over some skills, because I believe you were a motocross rider, or you at least had some time on the dirt on motorbikes. Is that right?
A little bit, I had more time on a snowmobile than anything, being in Alaska. We did ride motorcycles, but I had a KX80, and the thing would blow up it would just blow up. Like, I would get into it riding, and it would just blow up. And it was just so annoying. But yeah, that was, I did have I really wanted to ride motorcycles, but just didn't have all the means, all the setup and all the stuff to be able to do it. So yeah, I just was more into snowmobiles, because you could ride a snowmobile right from your house. You didn't have to, haul it around, so a lot of my friends were into it, but, I was always into something, whatever it was, playing hockey, skiing, it was never all in for one thing, and it's kind of my life right now too.
Pretty active childhood then. So were you doing a lot of wrenching in the early days? Like, you were pretty familiar with your own setup to get to races?
I think I was better than most. I was definitely better than Harry. Sorry, Harry.
Yeah.
I was listening to Harry's podcast, and he was like, by the way, I wasn't the best at, working on stuff, but I could clean the jet ski, man. I remember his skis were polished to the tilt. So,
good.
So I wouldn't say I was a great wrench, but I could get around. And that's kind of helped me. That helped me really get on the tour, because I traveled with David Gordon my first year as an expert. And the only reason why he invited me to help him, because he didn't know a thing about jet skis. Like, he could barely change a spark plug. And so he was like, hey, I'll take you along. I'll pay for most of the gas. You can use my rig. You just take care of most of your expenses. And, he really made it available for me to get on the tour, to make something of myself.
Because at that stage, he was a world champion, and in 88, you'd already won the expert class. Is that right?
That's right. So David Gordon, if you know a little bit about David the Flash Gordon, he was a very anal guy, and he was very, he just trained and raced, but working on jet skis and all that stuff that was part of his demise, because he couldn't tell when something was wrong, so I kind of helped him on that side as much as I could. I was basically as a parts changer for him. Like, he would get stuff from PJS, and then I would bolt it on the ski. And so it really helped me learn how to do more mechanical stuff, and then to build a relationship with Bill Chapin, which was, Bill was his right-hand man. And then Bill and I were racing against each other. So it was pretty interesting that we got to do that. I got to work on David's skis, race against Bill Chapin, and, because as or a lot of people back then were very secretive of their setups and, what they had, so.
Yeah. And I hope we can delve into a little bit of those secret tech specs later on in this chat, but because I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that would love to know what was going on behind the scenes and under the hood.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you every secret I have. Just remembering those secrets, is the hard part.
Of course. We'll touch on that later. What I'm really interested in is, so you've gone from expert champion in 88, and then 89 was, I think, your first pro year as a rookie, number 56.
Yep.
And then is that the first year you had the sponsorship with Butch's, and just how did that all come about?
So I was racing for a small shop, Arizona Jet Ski, Jim Farron, which he was, everybody that was helping me, helped me get to the next level. Each person, they were, I was a kid. I didn't have my parents were super supportive, but as far as having them come and just throw a bunch of money at the table, it wasn't going to happen, so I always had support, which was, got me to the next level. But Jim Farron at Arizona Jet Ski gave me a full blown mod, a super stock, built it from the ground up, used a lot of really good parts. He put his heart and soul into the skis. So when I went through that whole expert year, I raced for him. And then moving on into my 1989 pro rookie season, I got the sponsorship with Butch's Jet Ski, and it all came about through Jet Pilot. Jet Pilot came to me and was like, hey, we want you to be on our team. And at that time, Jet Pilot asked you to be on the team. Like they were the shit. They were
everything.
They were like, if you were a Jet Pilot rider, you were on cloud nine. Like you were the badass, so.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted, that, because I saw what they were, doing for the sport, and, what it was going to do for me as far as marketing me and, doing advertising. And that's a whole nother part of the sport that, that's really important is, the marketing side. And, the first time everybody had nicknames. I didn't have a nickname at that time. And Scott Burnsworth came up with, Vertical Victor, and he came up with like all these crazy names. And I was like, dude. And then they're like, they did an ad, and it's just, and I didn't even know the nickname.
Yeah.
And it was like, Victor Sheldon is the Slasher. And from that day on, I was the Slasher. Like I didn't have nothing to do with it.
So it's Jet Pilot. Jet Pilot is responsible for Victor the Slasher Sheldon.
They are 100% responsible for it. And I'll never forget that ad. It was like, Victor Sheldon is the Slasher. I'd never seen the ad before. It came out, and it was just like, I guess I'm the Slasher, this Freddy Krueger hand and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, the Slasher, like, God, sounds like a murderer or something, So, but yeah, it was cool to have those guys in our court. And Steve Laham was like, he and I got along, like the whole team got along really well, because my personality was, coming from Alaska, it was similar, kind of just similar people, just Midwest, Alaska, kind of meshes together real nice.
Yeah.
Tim Merval was my mechanic. And the first time I met him, he was just a freaking biggest hard ass. Like he didn't want to like me, and
oh, really? Made you prove yourself.
Yeah, he was the kind of guy you had to prove yourself to him. I was like, hey man, could I get some different grips? And he's like, no, we race with those grips, and I'm just like, wow, but I like, okay,
Yeah, okay, do it.
If you say so, just the littlest things. But man, the story I'm going to lead into right now about Tim Merval, my mechanic, is a really good story. So at any rate, I'm racing for Butch's Jet Ski. They're making me these badass jet skis. They're, super behind me, and, doing, they did some weird stuff, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Did they come to you, or did you sort of knock on their door and go, hey, look, I've got some results, I want to come and ride for you?
No. So the whole thing went through Jet Pilot. So Phil Johnson set it all up. It was like, hey, Butch's was like, they didn't know really me. They were just like, hey, we want an up and coming guy. And we're like, Victor's the up and coming guy. He's the expert world and national champion. They're like, okay, yeah, we want him, because I was taking over for Derek Peterson. Derek Peterson was their rider for forever. That was their main rider until I came along. And then Derek was still racing, but just a little bit. So it wasn't like I took his ride. He just was riding like half the year, and I was full into it, So.
And there wasn't as many people on the pro circuit back then, was there? I mean, you had the Ripper, you had Gordon, there was a couple of others, but it wasn't as what you guys made it into was definitely the step up in professionalism.
Yeah, absolutely. And then TV came along as well at that same time. So, our sport went from kind of organized to really organized to like, everybody, was real proper, kind of, but our sport never really went to that real super professional level. It kind of got there in the Kawasaki factory days, but there was still a part of it that was still just, fun and, chill. So that's what really made the sport as fun as it was, is it wasn't so serious. It was serious. We all made it serious come Sunday race day, but, we partied Sunday night. The whole group was out doing crazy shit. So, but I want to back up to my rookie season. So
yeah, your mechanic. Sorry, mate. Keep going.
Tim Merval and I became really good buddies, and we were tight. And so the whole team there was Oscar, Tim Merval, Steve Laham, and Sonny Laham. And they were all just super into racing and super supportive. So my expert year, I think we had 3 races here in down here, maybe one in Long Beach, one in Lake Havasu, I remember, and then maybe one in LA somewhere. So we had 3 races, and I went away with the points lead. Like Jeff maybe broke down a race, and and I won a couple races, and I was the champ. Like I was leading the points lead my rookie year. And I know Jeff was just like, wait a second, this is what's going on here. I know I was getting under his skin, and I didn't even know it because I was pretty young, didn't have a lot of direction, I was kind of doing it myself with, mechanic would come in, and, I didn't have like a whole team around me all the time. And which is just my personality. I'm kind of take stuff on myself. But at any rate, is where I'm going with this is I didn't really have a lot of leadership, and which would have been nice to be like, hey, someone take you aside and say, hey, you are winning. Like you're winning right now. Like you are like you can pull this off your rookie year. You could do something that guys have been trying to beat Jeff for years. He was undefeated. So at any rate, we go, Fischetti and I, we're like days late of getting on the road because he's being Fischetti.
Fish being fish.
I mean, I went to his house. I think I got there in the day, and we didn't leave until like the next day. And it was like they were still getting all their stuff ready, because the deal was Jet Pilot gave me the van, and then Fish had his trailer. So Fish and I traveled together in the box van. Talk about the odd couple. Like it was here's me, Mr. Clean guy, and tidy, and then Fish is just just like a train, just a earthquake went off daily. But Fish and I we had some really exciting times. I mean, we had some really fun times, also, and then we hated each other at the same time. So it was fun. But man, I remember one time when we were traveling along, like I fell asleep in the back, and I wake up and nobody's around. The van is parked in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around. I'm just like, what the hell's going on? And I don't know. I sat there for 2 hours, trying to. We had no cell phones. We had nothing. It was like you take off with the map, and you're like, you go places and figure it out on the fly. And so, anyways, I waited a couple hours, and here comes Fish back on his skateboard. He's like, "Oh, dude, I found a bowl over here, and I was skating." And I'm like, dude, we got to get to the race, man. Let's, we got to go. So
what a legend.
So we had a lot of good times. So anyways, we're traveling from Redondo Beach to Fort Myers, Florida. First race on the East Coast, after, Victor Sheldon, points leader, expert rookie season, Cloud 9. And we show up to Fort Myers, and my mechanic shows up, and he's bringing me new stuff, and, everything's all dialed. I'm stoked. So Friday night rolls around. It's like me, Harry Gocher, and I don't remember the 2 other guys. And my mechanics is like, hey, man, you could take my car. Go ahead and take my car to the club tonight. This is Friday night, so we could go out on Friday night, but we couldn't go out on Saturday night. So I jump in the car. We're all, Harry's got his hair, all done up, and he's looking like $1 million, and his big old belt and gloves, and, he was just looking good. I pull out of the driveway, from the hotel, pull the e-brake here, e-brake there. And all of a sudden I do a 180 in the middle of the road, like a 2-lane highway. And a lot of the roads there are like built on, they're built up. And I slide this car around, and I hit the curb and flip the car over, and we roll the car, and then the car stops, the car, and we're all, the car is upside down. I had just pretty much totaled my mechanic's rent-a-car that he just loaned me. And this is Friday night, and I'm like cocky, I guess, just, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was just like, I can't do anything wrong. Anyways, roll the car, and, Harry's like dying laughing. He's got his seatbelt on anyways, and I didn't have my seatbelt on, and I'm all upside down in the car. And he's like, hey, man, this is awesome, and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, get out of the car. And so we flipped the car back over, and then actually the car started, like it started back up, and then all these people are starting. I'm like freaking out. I'm like, we got to get out of here. Let's, so we get the car back over, get it out of the ditch, pull it up onto the road, pull it back into the hotel. I mean, we weren't even a half mile away from the hotel by the time we already rolled the car.
How old were you guys at this stage?
So I was 19. I was 19. I was either 19 or 20, like 19 or 20, like right in there.
So were you freaking out, or were you figuring out what your cover story was?
I was freaking out. Everyone else was just laughing at me. I'm just, I'm like thinking the cops are going to take me to jail. And, I'm like, I just wanted to get out of there.
Yeah.
And then the cops come, and we were already back to the hotel, and you could see the cops coming from all directions and lights. And they're like, I think they went over there. And, and they never found us. And, so I call my awesome mechanic. I'm like, hey, dude, can you come downstairs? He comes downstairs and he's like, dude, what happened? I go, oh man, the car went sideways and the car flipped, and, we're all okay. And he's like, okay, it's all right.
What a champ.
Anyways, his insurance paid for it. He was like, don't worry about it, cause I mean, I was a racer. So they're like, it's okay. Everything's okay when you're doing good,
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, I think we ended up actually going to the bar anyways, just like went out, carried on, come Saturday, it's the big news around all the pits and everything. And now we're getting our race face on and whatnot. So come Sunday, I got disqualified from slalom. Like, that's unheard of. Like, how do you get disqualified from slalom?
Did you miss a buoy or not go through the start gate? What happened?
Well, I did. I was feeling a little impatient, and the slalom course was inside of like a little lake. Like, it was just the size of basically not much bigger than a slalom course, but it was super glassy, and it was fair for everybody. So it was a good setup. Anyways, I go do my slalom run. I come back. I'm all kind of anxious. I don't even think I did that good. And I was waiting. There was like a little launch ramp that you're supposed to wait to, pull your jet ski in and up. Well, I decided I'm just going to jump my jet ski out of the pond and up onto this grass bank. And I slid, like I jumped up on it and I slid, because the jet skis back then, obviously you could do that,
Yeah. Nice and light, pop it up.
Nice and light. And you could just, you could hop around like they're nothing. And so at any rate, I went up onto the bank, slid into like some lady in a like on a chair, hit the chair, and then I just kind of walked away, like, hey, I'm sorry, and just walked away. And the official went and told everybody, and they're like, that guy, did the wrong thing. And anyways, they were making a point out of me, so they disqualified me, which was pretty because that's 20 points. That's
that hurts.
Boom, right. Just swiped right from underneath you. And I guess I had it coming to me. I mean, I shouldn't have done that. That's why I was saying, like, the story is kind of always have someone in your court to put you back into, if you're starting to, get a little sideways, make sure someone's there to get you back on course. And so anyways, then we're racing pro mod, the last race. I think I'm in the lead actually. And my jet ski blows up. Boom. So I went from points leader to back of the pack, all in one race. So it was nice to have Jeff on the ropes for 3 races, but after that, he pretty much ruled.
You ran away with it that year.
Yeah, I think he did pretty good. Like I know I won a couple more races, and got in really good battles. I mean, I noticed one of your questions is your favorite race, and I know that favorite race. I can still remember that favorite race.
Something that is so cool about this industry, and especially this era within our sport, is the platform didn't change too much for many years, which then gave aftermarket companies, I guess, the confidence to then put in the money for R&D to make some pretty cool things. Like, there were so many different heads, there were so many different pipes, so many different companies that were making anything from accessories to, pump modifications, intake rates, ride plates, everything. Anyway, the 89 season in your rookie year not only saw some, really flary colours coming to the scene, but your 56 boats in both the Pro Superstock and the Pro Mod were really interesting. And if anybody looks you up or looks up your boats as well, is you've got 2 things. One, in your pro mod boat, there's a big sort of lump out the side of your hood, which looks like you've done some kind of intake modification, which I'm really interested in hearing all about. And on your pro super stock boat, you've got, I don't know what you want to call it. I'm sure you've got a name for it, but people have called it the ram air induction, the pole scoop intake, air intake. And it looks awesome. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about those boats? Were they your innovations, or was it the team that sort of just put it on there and said, hey, run this is going to work well?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I really liked. Oscar, he was the machinist at Butch's Jet Ski. He was between Tim and Oscar. They were the two that, that came up with most everything. The thing I would do is, I think is one of my strong suits as a racer was more setup, handling and stuff like that. And I always wanted as much power as I could possibly get, so that was their department. The scoop off for the super stock, that was, I think it was a great idea. I don't think it really worked that great. I don't think it did that much. Cause I mean, we only did it 1 year. And that was actually something that I think Derek Peterson actually had the year before, and is what I think if they would have fine tuned it a little bit, it probably would have been a whole lot better. Just kind of like maybe got some air to ram into there, but the jet skis really, they always had plenty of air.
Okay, because some said that it was to do with your or anybody's riding style, that you're laying it over so much that you were trying to make sure you didn't get too much water inside the engine bay, and maybe.
Yeah, that's what it helped. That's what it helped most of is keeping water outside of the hood, because we could actually block off some of the intake inlets on the hood to actually, take the air from the handle pole. So it was, there was some really good qualities, that worked for that ram induction, the hood on the mod, that was really, I think people thought more was going on in there than actually was.
Really? That was just a head game.
Yeah. And that's really a lot of, in racing, it's always, there are situations where there's not a whole lot going on there, but people are thinking like, oh my God, what's going on here? So they're questioning it. But yeah, I think Jeff had a whole lot more going on with his skis than we did, and just kind of switching gears there, like in the 91 season, like we came out with pretty good jet skis. Like our skis were pretty good, and he came out with that fuel injection, and oh my God. Well, not so, it actually wasn't so much the fuel injection. I mean, but Jeff was always running bigger pistons than all of us. Like his cylinders were, they were legal, but their stuff was to the edge, big sleeves. I mean, and really you can't, in a jet ski, like bigger pistons, they just, I mean, that's a huge, a huge advantage,
But it's the combo as well about getting the power down through the pump. Did you guys, or did you know of any sort of big modifications that you guys were doing to your pump?
The pumps, as far as my pumps, they were pretty, I mean, they spent a lot of time grinding on them, making them as big as possible, but they were pretty, not a whole lot going on down there, really, to be honest with you. I mean, we came up with good combinations with moving the prop around, getting it, further back into the vanes. That was about, I think, our biggest deal. But we did do a lot of prop testing. That was one of our, even if they're, numbered the same, there was something about finding a really good prop. And even if they mic'd out the same and they looked the same, there was one that was better than the other. So I mean, if we could get, sometimes we would get 5 or 10 of the same one and just go through them all, and we would find big increases. And these skis, like I mean, a lot of people are always like, oh, they have the best skis and stuff, but man, we worked the hardest. We worked hard. I mean, yeah, we had, we were lucky enough to be able to have a mechanic to work hard with us, but we would go days, I would fly to Butch's jet ski and test there for weeks. I would fly to Georgia and test for weeks, prior to the races. And that's the back end stuff that people don't see,
And that's why it's so important. People don't realize why it's so secretive, because you've put in all that time. It's not just the racetrack and the day that you've, set it up a certain way. It's all those weekends and hours that you've spent testing different combinations that you don't really want someone to go and copy it straight away.
Yeah, it's really the race day, all that. That's like the easy part, the testing days of just all day, in a wetsuit, just, all day in a wetsuit. Like literally I'd be in a wetsuit all day long, and it was like, I'd always look at people that were dry and everything. I'm just like, God, they're so lucky, You're just sitting in a soggy wetsuit for hours and hours,
What was your favorite pitch impeller? Because you wouldn't have had variable pitches back then. I'm assuming you would have just modified the tips and that kind of thing to see.
Yeah, I mean, Tim was really good at that, just, tweaking on props. I don't remember. I want to say 16.5. I don't know. That number just comes to me that for some reason, but yeah, I don't exactly know, because they were all different, I think a 15.5 maybe in a super stock and a 16.5 in a mod, then obviously tweaking on them a lot.
So moving forward, and we can jump back as well, but just that 91 season, and Jeff came out with I guess his IndyCar inspired EFI system. When did you know about it? Was it something that you saw when he took his hood off, or was it the hype of the pits, someone saying it and you're like, well, I have to see it, or it sounded differently? What cued you guys onto the fact that it was different?
Yeah, I think they're pretty secretive about it. I think they were just saying, a lot of people are like, oh, dude, he's got some of this weird stuff in there. And, everyone always blew stuff out. I mean, it would always be just, because Jeff had a group of people, and, some of them would, I knew them, some of them would talk. Everyone loves to talk about seeing stuff or whatnot. So, but when they would rev that freaking jet ski out of the water, it sounded like, it would just like, you could hear it. If you were 10 tenths away from PJS, when that ski started up, you could just hear it, just bang, just bam. It was just there so fast. And so that's kind of like, it's like, oh shit, got to jump out on Jeff, got to be quicker off the gate. Cause I was always pretty quick, I got decent starts, and that's really important on a jet ski. And not only did I got a decent start, but I was always really aggressive, for the first couple laps, because you can make a lot of time, like if you were, there were guys that were just, that every bit as fast as I was, but they just didn't make those moves really quick in the very beginning, because everyone's bunched up. So you could pass 2 or 3 guys in the same corner, versus when everyone gets spread out, then you got to kind of take, each guy off, as they come.
So how long into the season did you join the arms race and bring in the IRS fuel injection system?
So that 91 season, we raced the whole year chasing Jeff. He was pretty unstoppable. I know that I would imagine that was probably one of his stellar years. He won a lot. Again, I won some races, but not near as many as I should. So anyways, we didn't do any testing on fuel injection until the World Finals. And I think it was IRS. I remember that name because I was like, who wants to be named IRS?
Yeah, right. Who's part of their marketing department? Come on,
nobody
guys.
likes the IRS, So anyways, these guys came to us and they're like, hey, we want to sell, this stuff through Butch's jet ski, and you have to run it. Basically, you have to run this to get a kickback on the next year, to get something out of this. I think they might have paid me like a little bit of money, but most of it was going through Butch's, because that was the sales port. That was they could sell it through there. And, Butch's was is what made Butch's jet ski was their distribution. Like they didn't just sell to their town in Michigan. Like they had a really good new mail order business back then, is what it was called. So anyways, they were, let's bring on this fuel injection. And, my ski sucked. It sucked. Like I tested with it and it would work, and then it wouldn't work. And it was like, oh God, it was so annoying, because, when you get something going and then it's like, yeah, it's there. And then all of a sudden it's not there.
Were the gains pretty significant when it did work? Like, did you feel like, fuck, this is hammering?
I think I wanted to make myself feel like it was working because, all these promises were starting to occur, because it's like, oh, well, we can this and we can that. And now we can, we go on this computer and all that stuff, when you're just doing carbureted jet skis or carburation stuff, and then you throw in a computer and wires, you think you're so cool. You're like,
of course, it's a pretty sexy time.
Now it's like kind of, it just happens, there's all kinds of electronics.
Yeah.
But back then you got to remember, there wasn't cell phones. Not many people had a laptop computer. And if they did, it was pretty spotty, But I think these guys at RS back then, I just don't think they had the mapping down. I think all the body, the hard parts, I think they were all built really good, but they just couldn't get the fuel to work proper in a jet ski because, as most people know, if you're working in the water with fuel and air, it's one of the hardest things to work with. Like a jet ski is really hard to get to work consistently really well because water really messes a lot of things up. It's like, they don't work together. So that was part of jet skiing that really made things really difficult, is the water. Motorcycle, you're just dealing with dirt and air basically. But, when you throw the water in there, that's when things aren't really sealed up and really, really tight, then it gets really interesting. And I don't know, a lot of people don't know that the stand-up jet ski motor was built for ships, for a bilge pump. It was a bilge pump motor. I don't know if you knew that.
I think I might have heard it along the grapevine, but maybe many years ago, and I've got no recollection of any details. So the floor is yours.
So when the jet ski was, when Clayton Jacobs made the jet ski, like they just started bringing parts from. They didn't want to invest a lot of tooling money to build stuff. They basically took that engine out of their ships and made that engine work for the jet ski. Obviously, they made a different engine plate and they did all the stuff, but the cases, the crank, the cylinders, the carburation, those were bilge motors for ships. So
there you go. So we just got mini bilges and we run around on them. That's awesome.
So hey man, you learn something on vintage jet ski all the time.
Yeah, that's right. So another interesting point is some people bring it up with your boats because Butchers made their own parts, or at least they had their branding on things like the cast aluminium pipes that West Coast made. But there's some pictures of your skis back then that you were running PJS pipes. Did you have were you wed to any particular brand? Was it more the tuning shop, or how did that all work?
That's what was so good about being like on, at Butch's, because they sold all those parts. They could whatever worked the best we were using. So we were just taking whatever, if this head worked better than that head, we would use whichever one would be the best, whichever pipe was the best. Obviously we'd take those pipes and do our, our grinding work and do our, specialty to them to get them work, with our combination. But yeah, that's what was really interesting to working with Butch's was they sold PJS stuff. They sold, West Coast stuff. I think that they had a really good business with West Coast performance stuff. They used pipes. Bob Zantos, I think it was Bob Zantos and Steve were pretty good business buddies. So, and then they would obviously make, Butch's pipes with their branding on it, but, we would still use what was the best. That's Tim and Oscar is like, whatever is the best we're using.
The 92 season, was that an exciting time with the advent of the 750 coming out?
That was my year. That's when I took off. I mean, I finally had some big pistons like Jeff did.
Yeah.
So, but this is, 1992 brings tears to my eyes half the time because, I went into it super ready and wanted just to race. I was it was a perfect storm, but it didn't start out like that. Butch's jet ski put so much time and effort into the 750 by doing all this stuff, shortening the handle pole, doing all this stuff that no one else had done. And I rode it and I was like, dude, I don't like this thing. It's big, it's heavy. I tried practicing with it, and I just wasn't giving it the time that it needed. I wasn't giving it. No one else was doing it. Everyone's like, I'm not racing those. Those things suck. They're too big.
Because that year Jeff was still on the 550. He hadn't made the swap yet, did he?
No, he was super against it. He was like, I'm not racing those things. Well, those things sucked. I mean, he was in the same position I was. He got one. He tried it. I seen him ride it. Like, and everyone was just like, they kind of stuck together. Everybody stuck kind of together.
So what was it about them? Because they obviously a bigger displacement engine, more power.
Absolutely. They were obviously, I proved that they were better, but it was all on accident. Like, I did not want to race this thing. I went into the first race, Long Beach Stadium. I blew my pro mod up in the first heat race. So I had no choice. It was either try to fix this jet ski or like there wasn't enough time to switch motors and do all that stuff. There was no time. And the 750 was literally just sitting over there, just, in the sand. It wasn't even on a stand. Like, we're just like, put that thing over there. And Butchers was like, dude, we really want you to race this thing. I'm like, I'm not racing it. No way. They're too big. They're too this. They're too that. And so so Tim's like, dude, you got to race it, And we didn't have any parts. And these things literally, like the porting that was done on them and the sleeves that we had in them, like literally would only go one race. Like, they would not last. Any rate, long story short, I race it. I win both races and I'm in the points lead. I'm just like, and I never looked back from that race all the way to the last race in Fort Lauderdale. It was Fort Myers. I won it in Fort Myers, but I think the last race was maybe Daytona or something. I won the whole series, like a whole race before. And I don't think I could have done it on a regular ski. I finally had a little bit of an advantage, where Jeff had always had a little bit of an advantage. And then when you put a little bit of advantage and a really good racer like Jeff was, that's a really hard combination to beat,
Yeah. Well, that was your year, wasn't it? You became the national champion. You beat Jeff. You had it over him. You were the man.
Yeah. I finally become the man. Like, I was, after, let's see, I started in 89 in the pro race, 89, 90, 91. So 3 years of, being, second and third and, in the mix, but not the man, so that year I'll never forget that year.
G'day, legends. Hope you're enjoying this episode of Ride by Day, Wrench by Night, and you're loving these stories from such a star of the sport. We wanted to give you a quick heads up that we now have every episode of our podcast series available to listen to at any time you choose. Just go to vintagejetski.com/podcast. Plus, while you're there, simply use code RIDEBYDAY to save $20 on every purchase over $200 when you're shopping for parts you need for your build. Now let's get back to the Slasher. Tell me, I think it was 92, and for me, it was heartbreaking because I think you'd hurt your knee prior to the World Finals. You were leading, so you've obviously you're a bit of battle, and I think you only needed to beat Jeff to retain to become the world champion. The Fish had a broken arm or some kind of injury, so that was limiting him. And you're swapping between first and second with Fish, and you're in front of Jeff. Everything is pretty sweet. And if you can get the win and you can win it, then all the more better. But then you miss a boy, and then you go round, and then you've smashed Jeff, as in just T-boned him. And if anybody that didn't know you guys would think, wow, that was pretty brutal, and maybe you hate the guy. But yeah, can you tell us about the rest of the race?
I can tell you about that, from my point of view. So Jeff had a brother. He's really, really smart guy, but he wasn't a jet ski racer. Like, he raced jet skis and he did it. I think he did it just because, that's what they did, He, that year, he would get in my way more than anybody. Like, he would just, every time I came, there was a mental block with me. Cause every time I come up to him, he'd be standing up, barely riding, and he would just get in my way, and he would just frustrate the hell out of me.
So he's on purpose. He's blocking for his brother.
I mean, probably, I always wanted to be it was just a racing thing, but I mean, I'm sure he was just, I think he just didn't give a shit. You know, he's just like, I don't care. I don't care if Jeff, like, I believe he even got in the, way of Jeff a few times, but he was just out there racing, and we are like, this is everything to us. Like this is like our lives. Like this, nothing else matters. Nothing is just racing jet skis and winning. That's all that mattered. And so, at any rate, on that race, like here I come up on him. I'm like, oh shit, here's freaking, Jeff's brother. I'm like, golly, like again, and here I had a pretty good race. I blew out my knee. Like I have a chance of winning. I only have a few more laps to go. Like all I got to do is keep the wheels on it. Don't make any mistakes. Stay straight. Go fast on the back straightaway. And I will become that'll be my first ever world championship in the pro mod category. And so I'm coming up on him, and sure as shit, he hits the buoy and just makes the buoy kind of like bounce around. And then I'm right there and I miss the buoy. And I mean, I'm pretty good at taking fault. Like, yeah, it was my fault. I fucked up, but this time, like it was a wash machine, just shit going everywhere. And literally he hit it, made the buoy do something funky and I was in the wrong line. And then I knew Jeff was coming. And then like, I literally saw him and I was like, I'm already moving. I didn't close my eyes, but I was just like, oh God, like I'm in the bad position right now.
Yep.
And I mean, so yeah, that was a pretty tough one. I know Jeff was a little mad at me after that one. I did hit him pretty hard.
Yeah, it would have hurt. I'm sure the adrenaline kept him going, but it was heartbreaking for all of us because not that we, Jeff's a hero of many and we don't want to see anybody lose, but we also love to see new people win. And then for people that are in the Victor, the Slasher Sheldon camp that have been rooting for you for all those years, that was what we were looking for. And then, so close. But I mean, you remedied that. You're an 8 times world champion. You've got such a great career that we'll share with everyone moving forward. But that was that first bit of bittersweet year.
Yeah, it was tough, Cameron. Like I literally, like I was definitely had some tears in my eyes at the desert party that night.
We spoke about the other day your career moving into, the 94 season and where, everything with the factory sit downs. Is there anything you wanted to touch on before we move away from that period of the 550s?
Yeah, well, I mean, that 750 year, that 92 breakout year, the 750, like, I mean, I won the following year too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really, I adapted to the 750 much better than Jeff did. I think it took Jeff a little while to adapt to him and to get comfortable with them. Cause I mean, he had the 550s dialed. Like I would argue anybody that he was the best 550, 440 jet ski racer to ever get on one of those things. Like he was, I mean, just watching him ride, he would almost have you beat and, mentally, because he was he flowed. So it was just effortlessly. So it was really cool to watch, to be able to see that. But yeah, when I got on the 750, then it was like, I kind of had that, for a couple of years, I kind of had an advantage. Like I took to it really well once I accepted it.
Before we do move on, speaking of effortless riding, you were the main man that brought the leg drag to the scene. Was that something that just sort of happened? Was it natural and you're like, oh, okay, it's called the leg drag now? Or were you, testing out different ways to maneuver yourself and get your weight across the other side? How did it work?
I took to it so well. I mean, the first person I ever saw do that was Scott Watkins, and he would do it both sides. He would do it to the left and to the right. And, I mean, he did it pretty cool, but I looked at it and I was like, oh, I can do that better, And I literally just I adapted my style to it. And to this day, Cameron, like getting on a jet ski, like even though you don't have to do it, even on the 800s, you didn't really ever have to take your feet out of the tray. But I just would do it. It was just like, just came to me like second nature. Kind of brought a little flair to the style too. But I mean, I wasn't doing it just for style. Like it actually worked really well on 440s and 550s and 750s. But 440s and 550s, like, doing it, going left like really fast, you could, it worked really good. And then going right, like my right hand turns were, as good as my left hand turns, where, like Jeff on a 550 haul, like he struggled turning right, at a high speed right. Like he could do it really good, a regular right hand turn in a corner, but first turn, hauling ass, making a right hand corner, Jeff always struggled with it. So every time we had right hand courses that, they would more went left than right. But every time we had right hand courses, I was just like, I got this. This is my jam. I'm going to smoke you guys.
No, that's very cool. So moving on to 94, what can you tell us about that year for you?
94 was an interesting year because that's the first year that Kawasaki started to come in and support, individual racers. I was lucky enough to be on their radar, and Butch's jet ski at the time was kind of taking I wouldn't say they're getting out of it, but they weren't into it as much as they were. They just kind of were taking a little step back. And that's when actually Jeff, I think, started riding for them. But I don't think they supported Jeff like they supported me. Like I think Jeff was I think his dad was really pushing on that part of it. And then I started working more with R&D Racing and Bill Chapin. So in the 94 year, and I'm sorry, but my skis they were junk. They looked better than anybody's skis. They looked so good, but they didn't have the power like my Butch's 750 did. I know Bill worked pretty hard on it, but I think that some guys, they blamed it on me that I was riding my motorcycle too much or I just wasn't into it. But that year didn't go over so well. I think I still finished second overall, but Chris McCluggage came in, and that was his first year of being the guy, of dominating. And he came in with Yamaha Superjet, supported by ProTech.
Yeah, right. And Bill was a bit of a legend that you've had for a while, but I've spoken to a few people, and he helped quite a lot. Like even though he was in your camp, Harry's spoken about how Bill has helped him. That he was always ready to help anyone in the sport. It wasn't exclusive, was it?
Yeah, and that's what kind of I think maybe that's good and bad. Bill, I think everybody has a story about Bill, good or bad. He would help a lot of people. So then you're going like, well, dude, what about, how you're helping everybody? Like you got to pick and choose here at some point, but that's just Bill. He wants to help people. And he had a business where he was, now me knowing more about business and, outside of being just a racer, you have to help everybody. There's opportunities, you got to take them.
Yeah.
But
no, that's fair.
I have some great stories about Bill. Bill helped me a lot. He was, even when I was racing against Bill, he was helping me get going. It was pretty interesting when we became teammates with Christy and they were part of our team, so it was fun times.
Did you do training together? Like what was it? What was the team atmosphere like with Christy?
Christy, it was super serious, and we all trained together. We did stuff together. We went, we ate together. It was just like, we had our little system, it was nice to have that we were starting to build a little pack, like this was our little pack where, Jeff kind of had his mom and dad and friends, and they were the creators of that pack, like they would organize getting people there, we're practicing here. Cause in the sport of jet skiing, you can't just show up at it's not like motocross where you can just show up at a track and, you're going to moto with somebody, you actually have to get people together, and everybody's got to be on the track in order to get the proper training, even though, some guys aren't as good as others, but you could get 10 or 20 jet skis on the track at once, you got some some good quality testing and practice time.
So you left Butch's and you'd taken up the opportunity to work with Kawasaki factory team.
So no, it was still a satellite team.
Okay.
And it was supported by R&D Racing. So it was, Kawasaki was like, okay, we're going to, give you, expense money and money for traveling, for championship bonuses, win bonuses. And so it was kind of like, that was their first effort, in supporting, a jet ski racer. And Christy and I were, the first two to get that opportunity. And, I always loved Kawasaki. Like, I had a lot of really good friends there, even, good friends today still that work there. Kurt Rude, he's on the factory moto team. He was back there at that time. Any rate, so it was an honor to be able to race with them in that 94 season, as a stand-up, somewhat factory racer.
Were they giving you any parts or tech that no one else had seen before?
No.
Damn.
No, it wasn't that technical at that point. All of our stuff, which I think is where the sport really kind of went sideways, was going away from those, those hop-up shops, like a PJS, like a Butch's jet ski, or like a West Coast. Like, I think that's where our sport strived from, was actually the aftermarket people building the sport. It wasn't the manufacturers that were building the sport. It was all done through outside,
That supported so many businesses because it meant that there was so much more innovation too, because it was worth it for them to put in the time to make new parts, because it then supported their business and supported other people. They could employ more people. I guess when you bring it all in-house, there's less innovation. It becomes more of like the mafia.
Yeah. And I don't think it really, for the sport of jet skiing, it didn't never even, my dream was to be a factory racer, race for the factory team, just like, because most of my friends were motocross racers, and so I was around that all the time and saw how much, the money they made, but making more money comes with more politics, and our sport for a long time didn't have a lot of politics in it. It was still just a lifestyle sport where you made a little money, you did some stuff, you had a lot of fun. You went out and you talked to your competitors. You didn't, you weren't like F you. And we raced hard, but we played hard too, so that's what really made the sport of jet skiing. And then it tried to go down that route of manufacturer support, bunch of politics.
And it really became then the them and us, because you've got Kawasaki and then Yamaha. Yamaha came into the scene with their Superjet.
Sea-Doo.
Of course. So can you walk us through, I've got some notes here, but basically your story that you shared with me the other day, those years that then you went to the sit downs and how that came about.
Yeah, I'd like to, because I actually got, I got canned.
Yeah.
After winning three national championships for Kawasaki's factory team. It's kind of funny. I started out with that straight away, but so basically from the 94 season, I was racing against Chris McCluggage. He wins I think he probably, I don't know if he won the world championship, but he won the national title. And, he kind of, he beat me, after winning 2 straight years in a row, 92 and 93. So anyways, we're going into the 95 season now. And I was kind of like, bad year on 94 on the stand up. And Mike Preston was he was hired to be team manager at Team Kawasaki, their first ever factory in-house jet ski team. And we were racing sit downs only, and we were not allowed to ride stand-ups. We were not allowed to that's what we raced. And this team manager was a friend of mine, but we somehow down the road we butted heads some way. That's the only way I can say it, because what they did was not right. They brought me in to win for them. I won for them in the 785cc national championship. And I signed on the team at a pretty low salary, but, high bonuses and high wins, so I was, making, I think I could make up to $20,000 a weekend.
Wow.
Like, it was big. It was really big money at that time.
Yeah.
That was, there was times, in the beginning we were making $20,000 a year,
yeah.
So our win bonuses, I think our win bonus was 75 grand to win a national championship. So, and that's no bullshit.
That's some big coin, especially for a young guy.
Actually, the check's still in that there's like a little envelope. They made me an envelope with like a little signature thing on it, and the check was inside there. And I still have the check, not the actual check. That thing's been spent a long time ago. But but anyway, yeah, it was big money, but you had to win, so I won. And it was a tough year. Like, we blew jet skis up. We went through so many parts. Like, Cameron, it was like, I'm just looking at how much money they spent, and it's not a problem. Just engines after engines after engines, hulls after just parts everywhere. And Kanamori was our, he was on the team, but he had a lot to do with testing, but we were total rivalries. Like, he had the same equipment I did, maybe sometimes even better than me, because he put so much time into his skis and into his work. So anyways, I went into the next year, and I did not have a really good year in the 785cc sit down titles or races, but I was racing the 1200cc class, which was basically, that's where our sport was going, was the bigger CCs. Going into that year, I was like, I begged them to let me ride both classes. Like, I'm like, just let me ride both classes. Like, I can ride that thing really good. It was just a bigger, like, more power. It was, 11, I think there were 900 cc's at that time, but they were triple cylinders. I love the power on them. So long story short, because I don't want to talk about the sit downs too much, but yeah, I ended up winning that 1200 or the big bore class national championship. So cool. I won another race. And then they come to me again, and they're like, you know what? And they're hiring Chris McCluggage at this time. And they're like, you know what? If you want to stay on the team, the only thing we got for you is we want to have a factory stand-up racer, and we want, you can ride, you can do it, or we're going to hire someone else.
Was that a good thing for you, because you were kind of missing being in that mix?
Oh, it was when that came about. Actually, I was just like rejuvenated. Like, I had been 2 years. Like, I had one bad year on 94 on the stand-up. And then I kind of left it, I just kind of walked away from it and went straight into the sit downs, I want to be a factory racer, and this is a great opportunity. And, which was really cool. Cause at that time, like, if you wanted to be on a team, that was the team to be on. Like, just like Harry said, like, we rolled up to the first race in a freaking huge semi, badass, like the shit, team shirts, just, look, people are just like, who are these guys, and where do they come from? But it was so weird. Is where I'm going with this is, like, so now you're a factory rider, and now all you did is you just were just in this little bubble. Like, you were just inside the semi. You didn't go out and, mosey around with other people. It just, the whole vibe changed. Like, it went from this people, doing stuff together and having fun and, crashing cars.
Families and different levels.
It went straight to political, went straight to just like, you're in your team. You don't want to go talk to him because he's the enemy now. And it's like, that really sucked, because it was just so fun when people weren't enemies. They were just racers, and we just raced, and then we partied.
Yeah. And you can have friends and spend time with people that enjoy what you enjoy.
Right. So anyways, but I was pretty stoked, because, this will be my third year on the team. I'm racing only stand-ups, and I have a fucking badass stand-up. Like, it's like, I lived in Havasu, and at this point, I live in Southern California. Like, it doesn't get much better.
And you're on an SXI at this point? It's 750 SXI?
Yeah, 750 SXI, which I still have. I still have it here. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
And actually, the test ski, we had this test ski that was our test ski, and we did all this crazy stuff to it. And then we just took that and sent it to Japan, and then they made the ski off that. And I never was like, I was never super stoked with the test ski. Like, it just didn't handle, like, you tried so much stuff and you just could never get it to how you really wanted it. So I was a little bit like down, like, man, this it's like ski's working, but it's not as good as what Jeff's racing against. Cause now Jeff and I are racing against each other again. I think when I was racing sit downs, I would see his dad all the time on the airplanes flying back and forth, and we would sit next to each other. So we weren't racing against each other. So we were back to being kind of buddies again, And then when I came out and started beating him, I think I won every race that year. Like I might've lost one time. I was on fire like this. So anyways, going back to the test ski sucked. Then I got these skis, and these skis were just like, I rode them one time, didn't change a thing, and told my mechanic, Tony, don't touch a thing. Like these things are perfect. Don't do anything. And these skis, like everybody wants to work more on them to get them better and better and better. But I was like, dude, do not touch these things. Like, I think that year working with me, I was the simplest, I was the easiest ever, because they were just, every time I got on them, they were just perfect. We hardly did any testing, nothing. We just kept them nice and maintained and, did everything right. And they were so good. I was just like, this was like just a few days before the first race that I actually got them all together or they got them all together. And I said to myself, I'm like, I'm winning. I'm going to win every race. And the only way I'm going to get beat is by something stupid. So anyway, I won like every race. We won the national championship. We went to Havasu, and first race, I'm gone. I'm literally gone. And I'm just like, I think I only have like a few laps to go, and I was way far away from Jeff. And the carburetor, little linkage in between it.
Yeah.
It's the bolt just slipped. The little set screw slipped and just shut down one cylinder. And I still to this day remember that just going through it, just like, I never said I was going to win. Like I never would say that. I would just be like, this is feeling so good. I'm just like, I got this, and just, I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Jeff just goes right by me, and he just kind of gives me a little thing like, haha,
Oh no.
And at this time, so, I mean, we started the season off kind of buddies, but then we started getting our rivalry back because, we're racing against each other, it's just part of it.
Yeah.
But, and then the second moto, we fixed the jet ski. Darren Headland, I think, was the one that actually, if we're going to name some names, might as well. But I guess after hearing about it, no one took ownership of why the carburetor did that. After hearing about it, it was like, hey, man, here's some carburetors, gave them a mechanic and said, hey, they're perfect. You don't need to touch them. And my mechanic was like, trusted him, like, because they worked hand in hand. But my mechanic, Tony, was like amazing mechanic. Like he was spot on. Like it wasn't his fault. I would never blame it on him. Anyway, it didn't happen. So I never became a world champion in the pro stand-up field other than the stock class. But that doesn't really matter.
No, I know it's the blue ribbon, the old pro mod. But you've had a lot of success in other areas.
So anyways, going into, after that year or after the race, I'd won the national championship. I lost the world championship by mechanical. And the team manager, Mike Preston, said, hey, man, so I got a deal for you. They dragged it out for months. Like, I'm like, hey, what's going on? And, Chris McCluggage was now their main rider, which, hey, he was younger than me. That's how it works, But he's like, he was finding a way to get rid of me, which really bummed me out because we were friends. But he just basically said, hey, man, I got a deal for you, a satellite stand-up deal.
Going back to what you started with.
We're going to give you some parts, and we're going to give you a little this. We're going to give you a little that. We're going to basically test you and see if you're really, really a Kawasaki guy. Like basically go from, I don't know how anybody that's has some pride and that's a real true racer. Not many of those people would take that. They'd be like, I'm not taking, your leftovers.
Yeah.
They just won you 3 national championships on 3 different jet skis. And now you're just going to like throw me out the door.
Yeah. You've done the job.
Basically offer me a stand-up support ride that you have to basically, now I have to go and hire people. I have to do all my own testing. I have to do all the stuff. So I was like, oh man, okay, thanks, man. Yeah, I'll get back to you. I never got back to him. And I went straight to Steve Lawler at Yamaha. And Steve Lawler, like, hey, stud, I got you, man. I'll take care of you. So I made the switch onto a Yamaha Superjet with support from ProTech.
And how did you feel? Were you like, wow, this is actually a pretty good boat? I mean, you would have ridden them anyway in between seasons, surely.
Yeah, they were good. And I mean, to date, like that's the boat that I think that I enjoy riding the most, just because it's between that and a 750. You know, the 800s, I really like them, but they're still big, you know? I mean, I just enjoy a boat that you can just play around. I mean, me not racing now, like I just enjoy the lightness and just, you know, of a light style ski, which a 750 is like that. The Superjets are like that, even with an 800 motor. They just have that, you know, that nimbleness.
So by this stage, that would have been 96, would it, coming into that season with Yamaha?
No, so that would have been 1999. So
of course.
I did 3 years on the factory Cowie team. So 95, 96, and 97. 98. What did I do 98? Oh, I was 98. I was factory stand-up Kawasaki rider. So 98, I won the national title. And then 99, I went to, you know, a full deal on Yamaha.
And that's the round nose Superjet. What everybody knows, yep. There's only sort of some minor modifications with the hull in the later years. And then what happened? Because you ended up racing for a few years on a Polaris octane. So how did all that come about from jumping on with Yamaha to then octane?
So my 2 years, I think I did 2 years, maybe just 1 year at ProTech. I don't remember, but I did 1 year there and I did 2 years at Greater Yamaha. So I did 3 years on Yamahas. And then I did 1 year on a kooky team. It was at this time the sport was going sideways, and there was, you know, the rides were getting few and far between.
Yeah.
And so I rode 1 year on this team, man. Maybe it was 2 years. I don't know. I just remember it was just like, what am I doing? This is horrible. But anyways, so I did that 1 year, and then after that, the octanes were coming into play, and I had a couple buddies there. Tim Siebold, actually, he was. They were actually making the octanes for Sea-Doo, because they had a boat building company, and they built them there. Which they didn't know a whole lot about stand-up jet skis, but you know they could build a flat bottom boat like nobody's business. So when I first went there, the ski was, oh my God, it was just horrendous. Like this stuff was falling off of it. The handle pole was like 20 feet long. Everything about it was horrible. Like it just wouldn't turn. Like it could go straight, no problem, but it just would not like lay over. It wouldn't even turn like a Yamaha where you kind of pivot it, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of had to have that sort of technique. But, you know, I was, when we were working on it, and I got a lot of help from the guys from Factory Pipe, Ross and Mark and Randy from Watcon. And Randy was like, he was a Polaris guy. He bled Polaris. So he orchestrated, you know, helping me get the ski to where it was.
Would your development go back to the Polaris drawing board? Did your racing and setup help them make a better ski, or did it stop at the race?
I think there was definitely some things that we did that they used for their manufacturing. The only bad thing that happened was they weren't around long enough to really capitalize on it. You know, like they only did that for, I mean, maybe a few years.
Yeah, I thought it was only 2 year build. But they came out with, you know, an aluminium handle pole. Like it had all the go fast bits. It was a 777cc. It had a pretty good pump in it. What else was there? Quick steer, all the bits and pieces that you'd normally have to purchase. It was already on the boat, but obviously there was a little bit more set up to do from your end.
Yeah, I mean, the first year they were just horrible. I think the second year they got better because, you know, they shortened the handle pole to what my spec was. The tubbies worked unbelievable on them. For me, like some guys didn't like them, but we got, you know, we made a set of Yamaha tubbies fit on a Superjet. You know, like we were just taking stuff from wherever we could to try to get it to, you know, to work for me. The first race, like I raced a Yamaha Superjet painted like a Polaris, and the Polaris guys saw it on TV and they're like, dude, you can't do that. Do not do that again.
Yeah.
So I did that 2 times. I did it because we raced that year in Paris, in Bercy in the wave pool, downtown Paris, in like a indoor jet ski race. And there wasn't even an octane to use. So we set like my race boat up from the year prior, a Yamaha, and painted it red and black pole and put Polaris stickers on it. And
in disguise.
And they're like, okay, that's okay, because we understand, but going into the year, like we were doing surf races. I think we were doing like half surf races and half regular races. And some of the higher ups were just like, you can't do that. Like, this is so. They were like, the next week I had to race the Polaris, and I was a little scared because we were having some issues, but yeah, we pulled it off. We actually, it actually became a really fun project because, I kind of saw them kind of getting behind us a little bit, and helping us with some R&D, and I was starting to build a good little team, so it's kind of coming back from, factory racer, just, do this and this, to, a guy that, got my hands into the middle of it, and built a team, and, did a lot of stuff here at my house still. And, I had a couple little ponds close by that we could go do some testing. And, we took a real good stab at it to be competitive. And I mean, obviously we were super competitive in the stock class. Like, we dominated that every year. That was something that I became like kind of known as the stock. I finally won a world championship, in the stock division. It was kind of fun taking a ski that was kind of a pile of shit and then making it something that people still ride today that are pretty good. They're not bad.
Yeah, there's a bit of a cult following for them out there for sure.
They like in the surf. I don't think there's a better surf boat made today. As far as a surf boat, racing surf boat, that thing with the factory pipe, tuned by Mark and Randy, like those things, that thing freaking ripped. That thing had some gnarly bottom end.
There's certainly some sick footage of you on YouTube ripping it up in the surf. It's pretty cool.
Oh, from the surf races. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was really cool to, we had Chris on the ropes because it was like it was surf only, like it was 8 races, and they would do 2 in one weekend. So we'd race Saturday and Sunday, and it was 4 weekends, but it led up to 8 races. So they had a full TV show, and we actually, we were racing against Chris McCluggage and the factory team, the factory truck. And, it was just, we were just a little, here I was a factory racer. I was in that position. And now I'm in a position where I'm, driving a pickup truck with a small little trailer with 2 jet skis and a mechanic racing against a team like that. It was pretty satisfying to beat them.
Absolutely.
We didn't win the title, but we won some races.
Yeah. So what do you really, I mean, everybody's got their opinion and you're really at the coalface. What do you think the demise, I shouldn't say demise because we all want it to be bigger and better, but the reality is jet skiing's not as big as it was in its heyday, especially when you were swapping fiberglass with the likes of Harry and Jeff and the Fish. So what do you think needs to happen or should happen or could happen to make it just as big and as good as it was?
Man, I don't know if that ship has sailed. I mean, with everything that I've been doing, for the last 8 years, 9 years, putting on mountain bike races, I know I could put on I know what the sport of jet skiing needs at this time. It's just finding a good team again to go at it and do it as it should. I mean, the sport, I think I mentioned to you this before, like the sport of jet ski racing, I don't think the sit downs fit in it. Personally, I think there is a spot for sit downs. Don't get me wrong, but it's not racing on a closed course at Lake Havasu in front of all those people. If I was doing it, I would put on sit down races that would race basically around the lake, and they would come through the buoys and do some corners. They would do maybe a pit stop in front of the people, and kind of use that aspect. Because watching one of them race, there's very few times where it's like an exciting race. Like it's not that exciting. And the courses that they make, so here they make a course that fits a sit down or a stand up. They don't go hand in hand. They don't belong on the same course anytime, nowhere. So I would prefer seeing them race on a Saturday, as more of like an endurance type race.
Yeah. Like an ocean race as well.
Well, that's where they need to go all the time. I'm just talking about at the World Jet Ski Finals, because that's the biggest race, but they, they don't need to be racing on a closed course in front of people. They need to be on a bigger scale course that would like implement maybe some pit stops and something of that nature. And then you would have closed course racing on stand-ups and on a course that's designed just for stand-ups.
Nice and tight.
You don't design a course that fits two different animals on it. And the course, they set up basically the same course year after year. And it's like spectators watching it need binoculars to watch it. Like, it makes zero sense. I mean, I would love to see the sport of jet skiing come back. I've basically had to, when I left the sport, like I didn't really leave it. I mean, I guess I kind of left it, but I didn't want to be, a guy owning a shop and, running a shop to make my money, from jet ski, which is probably a pretty good business to be in, actually. But I wasn't set up for it. I was just kind of like, I raced and I wanted to race. And then I wanted to be like a team manager for a race team. That didn't happen because our sport, just kind of became what it is today. It would have been nice to go down that road or have that sort of opportunity if the sport, would have kept growing as it should, or just kind of went down the path that it needed to go. Because the guys that were in it, like they were leading in the right direction. And then, in the 90s, but, when say 90, I want to say 95 or 6, new people came in and, started going a different direction. And it started basically, I think the sport started declining around 98, slowly, like from that point on. But having the right people in there, I think could have steered it in the right direction.
All right. I like to ask every one of our guests what your go-to handling mod is or set up so they can get the most out of their ski. What's your favorite?
Well, I mean, we could talk about that for hours, so let's go with, since we're talking vintage here, let's talk 550s.
Absolutely.
Back in the day, like the stuff you guys have got nowadays, it's like I haven't ridden one with the, with the wings on them and the tubbies and, all this stuff, those super long ride plates. I haven't ridden a good one. So, I mean, I'm still riding, the ones I have are just basically just like they were when I raced them.
Sure.
And they're pretty hard to ride. Like they are really hard to ride. My friend Larry Hesley has a PJS mod it rips, and he rides it really good. And I tried to ride it, and I was all over the place. But those mods, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that we did, I mean, my setup was pretty basic. Like it wasn't anything super gnarly. The only thing we did was we put a little bit of weight in, underneath the gas tank, put a little lead underneath there, kind of help the nose, kind of pounce through stuff. But in order, you put weight into a ski, you have to have horsepower to, take care of the extra weight. So, some of the best handling skis were slower handling skis. That's what really made, there was very few guys that got really good, but they were only good because they could handle the power.
Yeah.
And that's really, there was guys, I got on a couple guys' jet skis and they were way faster than mine. Way, like they were just like, oh my God, like Tim, Oscar, like you guys, this guy's ski blows my ski away, and
but they couldn't stay on it.
They couldn't handle the power.
No, fair enough. So it's all about finesse back in the day, being fit, being light.
Well, as we grow older, we tend to try to make things easier. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious in our sport of jet skiing. Like now you have a Kawasaki, 4-stroke that you literally, I mean, maybe 6 people can carry it. 4 people probably can't even carry it. So I mean, yeah, it's gotten a lot easier. And that's part of evolution in our society.
What are some secret tech things you used to do back in the day, like engine setup that we may not have known about back then, but you can share with us today?
I mean, it was, man, there were so many little things. With my setups, there were always a bunch of little things. It wasn't one major thing that comes to mind. And again, I'm maybe being a little boring right now because I'm not like, oh, we did this, we did that, but
yeah,
like my setup was pretty basic. I mean, once I got to the bigger skis, we messed with intake grates a lot, with top loaders and just angles. And, it made a big difference of, what was dragging for water drag and how fast it could, slow down. And so intake rates were, got pretty, there was a time where we were doing a lot of testing on those, because everything, like, you tested a bunch on impellers and then you tested a bunch on this, and then you just keep working your way around, the whole thing.
I assume you're always running total loss.
Yeah.
Was it KV ignitions or MSD?
MSD back in that day, we used we actually made our own. We would use part of PJS's. I think we used their flywheels, and then we'd use their total loss ignition, parts of theirs. And, they would kind of jimmy stuff around to, make it a little more efficient or a little bit better.
I guess there's some trickery in the porting and all the rest of it your mechanics would have been doing. And
yeah, that was a big, like, that's where, whenever you pulled the cylinder off, like, you were always just, I remember Bill was like super gnarly. Chapin was just like, he would just be like he had a brick of gold, which he did probably at that time, but he was super secretive. Like, they were covering all kinds of stuff up all the time.
That's cool. Do you know what kind of compression you guys were running?
I think for this, I want to say for the mods, I want to say like 200 to 205, 210, above 200. But then you got a guy like Fischetti, he would run like super low compression, so.
Yeah, right.
And that was really back in that period, that was what was very interesting, is everybody had such a different setup. You had Jeff with big pistons, and, everybody had some sort of problems. I mean, it was a bilge pump motor for ships, and here we're making them into these super modified piston port, trick racing fuel, fire and breathing, I don't even know what the horsepower, we didn't even have dynos at that time. We didn't, I'm PJS might have, but I don't even know what horsepower they were putting out.
Was most people running the round body 38 mil Makunis for carbs?
At that time, yeah. Dual 38s. I think for the most time, well, then when you got the 750s, you're running, bigger carbs and stuff. But I think for the 550, it was mainly 38s, maybe a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
But 38s were pretty common.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. I guess it comes down to, true rideability and just the finer art of porting back then.
Yeah.
What's your best racing memory? Best race ever?
My best race, when I was looking at your points that you want to touch on, and and this race sticks out to me, like, because it was my first ever like gnarly battle with Jeff, and this was '89, so my first pro year. We would race in Lake Michigan every year in Chicago. It was like one of probably the biggest and best races we'd do all year, because the promoter there would really promote it well, and we would have tons of people on the beach, partying and hanging out. And then for me, Butch's jet ski was just around the corner. So I would basically leave like Sunday night or early Monday morning and drive straight to Butch's shop, show up there. And literally the second if I was driving all day and all night, cause we drove that year, like, we didn't fly in and all that stuff. It was like when we would go on tour, we would be gone for 3 or 4 months from home. Like, we were gone. Like, we wouldn't fly home, and it was like we were on the road, just having, experiencing a lot of fun, chasing girls, partying, just driving go-karts, getting kicked out of places, just having the time of our lives. So at any rate, go straight to the shop after driving however far we drove. They would rip those skis out, and they would just start digging in, just rebuilding everything, getting them nice and tightened up. And for some reason, like, we always had an advantage, like, in that area, like either it was the air or just confidence, but my skis were always they just ripped. Like, they were just so good. So at any rate, this was Lake Michigan, 1989. I think it was towards the end of the year. Me and Jeff were racing, and it was the pro mod. And we went back and forth. I would have to say, if the race was 15 minutes long, we probably went back and forth 10 times. Like, literally just it was just a race, back and forth, back and forth. He would pass me, I would pass him. I would fall down, he would pass me. He would fall down, I would pass him. And it was just a knockdown, drag out. And I won that race, and I was like, it was just an individual race, but like that race, I think I still have it on tape, and I can watch that tape and I can remember almost everything that was happening at a lot of the times that they were happening. And that's just shows you how focused you are 30 or 40 years later. And you can go back to that time and just be like, man, I was thinking this and I was doing that. And it's pretty cool to watch old tapes like that to really get into them. But that was my best ever race, winning that race and going back and forth with Jeff number of times. I remember when he came across the finish line, he was so mad, and I was so happy.
Yeah, it probably made the victory even sweeter.
Yeah, it's like he was just like, because he ended up winning that year, but it just felt really good. That was a good one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, Victor, thank you so much for taking the time and spending it with me and everyone else that's listening, because we just love hearing these stories about what it was like to be racing back in the day for those that weren't there and bringing back the memories for those that were. So really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, Cam, when a lot of, with your Instagram and all the social media stuff, I really appreciate you guys spending the time, and having somebody really into the sport, because that's what the sport has missed. A lot of people have just kind of like left it, and there's so much history and so much really good people and good fun that came from it. And just like Harry said, like that time of our lives it's just so much fun. Like everybody it just left such a mark, and so, but what's really sad about it is it's just kind of dissipated, it's kind of left. So having you guys kind of bring some of these old stories up and kind of reinvigorate it is really important for the sport. So, and I want nothing more than the best for the sport. Like the sport made me the person I am today.
Legend. Absolute legend. Thank you. And yeah, we love doing it. And there's a great community of people, young and old, that are really getting behind these old skis because they're a really great platform. They don't always run the way we want to on the weekends, but hence the wrench by night. That's kind of half the fun, learning how to make these things go.
Your slogan is how we lived, for 20 years of our lives. That's how it worked, man. We rode and we wrenched. We rode and we wrenched. It was no other way. That's what we did. We rode and we wrenched. So it was like, there was a lot of times where you're just frantically you're just so excited to be out there racing, and your ski is just 20 minutes from being ready. And it's just, the 20 minutes is just too long. You're like, I gotta be in it right now.
Yeah.
And that's, things weren't so, things just broke on the things. Batteries would die. So many things it was always just a moving ball, everything was just moving, and you're always just like, God, you just want to, it'd blow. I don't know how many jet skis I blew up in my career, but I know it was, oh my God, it was so frustrating because all you wanted to do is just get in the middle of it and just be racing and riding, and it was like there was always something that was going on with it. But man, I wouldn't change anything.
Legend. Wasn't that incredible? So many great stories and so much insight into the way life was for a pro jet ski racer. And what a journey it was. I love Victor's retelling of what went on tour with the likes of the Fish, Gocha and Jeff. Man, they made some good memories, didn't they? And what do you think about Vertical Victor? Could it have taken off? Or do you think the Slasher was the right choice in the end? Talk about a journeyman though. I think Victor's superior fitness and active lifestyle that he still carries through to this day certainly contributed to his success. He also has some really interesting thoughts on the direction of the sport too, don't you think? And how we could make it better for the future. Thank you so much for your time, Victor. It was really great to chat, mate. Before we move on, as ever, please remember to send in your stories or chance meetings you might have had with the Slasher, and I'll read out the best ones in the coming episodes. You can send them to me on Instagram @VintageJetski or email them in at podcast@vintagejetski.com. As always, we hope you enjoyed the show, and if you haven't yet subscribed, you can find us on your favourite podcast app. Don't have one of those? That's all right, because we have every episode available right now on our website. So until next time, legends, ride by day and wrench by night.